NHL player Collin Graf of the San Jose Sharks. Why quiet achievers matter more than we think. This video explores why a player like Collin Graf is such a compelling modern hockey story. It's not because he's a headline name or a guaranteed future superstar, but because his trajectory reflects something deeper, the quiet achiever's journey. A player who is overlooked because he is adaptable, consistent, and dependable. Hockey culture gravitates towards prodigies. Macklin Celebrini, Will Smith, Connor Bedard, Matthew Schaefer, and similar names are currently dominating discussions. The 2025-2026 season has been very exciting so far, and like everybody else, I've really been enjoying watching some of the young, exciting players. The San Jose Sharks, in particular, are in the midst of their rebuild and are a very exciting team to watch. What I really noticed was that these players have always been wanted and watched. Their paths have been paved since childhood, and people predict big things for them. In a hockey league that's obsessed with top picks and prodigies, the Celebrinis, Bedards, etc., Graf represents a completely different type of archetype. His resilience reveals itself through setbacks, reinvention, and consistency rather than hype. He has earned trust one brick at a time, and his resilience has been forged through repeated adversity, making him the kind of player who I would argue is even more reliable and stable precisely because he's had to prove himself when others didn't believe in him. In terms of his background, as a teenager, Graf was dismissed by scouts for one primary reason: size. At 17, he was around 5'8" and 145 pounds. If you're that size in a draft year, you can play very well, and many NHL teams still won't look twice at you. He wasn't drafted at 18, 19, or 20. Most players would have given up on their NHL dream by that point, but Graf didn't. Instead, he leaned into what he could control: intelligence, positioning, timing, vision, and decision making. He learned to survive as the smallest player on the ice, which forced him into becoming the smartest. That hardship forged the traits that define him now. As he put it in an interview, he said that because of his size, he had to do extra just to get by. And he said, but in the long run, it really helped me because I had to be smart. I had to be careful on the ice. If I put myself in a bad spot, I was going to get hurt. The guys were so big and I was so small, so it helped me learn where to go in situations and keep myself in good spots on the ice. He started at Union College, then he transferred to Quinnipiac, which is a very strangely named college. Once there, he became a national contender and immediately became a top offensive driver. He was a key contributor in Quinnipiac's national championship run. In 112 NCAA games, he had 54 goals and 76 assists, being a total of 130 points. He was one of the most productive, undrafted college forwards of his class. His elite junior and senior seasons elevated him from too small to one of the most sought-after undrafted college free agents, which is kind of remarkable. So as mentioned, rather than being selected in the NHL draft, Graf was signed by the San Jose Sharks as a free agent, which meant no automatic organizational investment or draft prestige backing him. Signing with the Sharks immediately put him into the most competitive environment of his life. Unlike a top pick like Celebrini or a Bedard, he wasn't guaranteed anything. He didn't have a guaranteed roster spot. He could be sent down to the Barracuda, which is the Sharks' AHL affiliate, at any time. He had no guaranteed minutes. He didn't have guaranteed power play time. Because the Sharks were not really seen as a cup contender or a playoff contender, he was able to participate in 7 NHL games as an end-of-season audition. Then the real work began. His AHL assignment is where I thought his story becomes very interesting. Elite players like Celebrini, Bedard, and Schaefer are extremely unlikely to ever see the AHL. There's no being sent to the minors for them. In contrast, after signing his contract, playing a few NHL games, Graf spent time in the AHL. He adapted, learned, and expanded his game. This versatility includes embracing roles he had never held before college or pro, with penalty killing the clearest example, which demonstrates adaptability rather than entitlement. Penalty killing requires anticipation, defensive trust, and disciplined positioning. traits that most elite scorers don't build early because they're not asked to. So, this is what separates him from the prodigy archetype. He is intensely coachable. He has no ego about role, deployment, or visibility. He does what needs to be done and simply wants to be useful. Graf's journey demonstrates resilience, and to me, I think his path matters more than flash. His trajectory is filled with friction points where a less resilient player would have broken. He was undrafted 3 times. He was physically undersized. He developed later than his peers. He spent time in the NHL, but then he had it snatched away from him and spent significant time in the AHL in the Barracuda. He had to invent new parts of his game on the fly. Can you imagine Celebrini or Bedard hitting that many walls? They've never been ignored. They've never been told they weren't good enough. They've never had their dream hinge entirely on their ability to adapt. Whereas Collin Graf has lived through that, and he's survived that, and he's also grown because of that. It's the kind of resilience you can't teach a player who's always been the golden child. Bedard has experienced more adversity than Celebrini. He has dealt with criticism, backlash, and a serious injury. So, yes, he has faced genuine challenge and criticism already. But what I'm highlighting isn't who suffered more, but that the nature and stakes of their challenges have followed fundamentally different career assumptions. The criticism that was aimed at Bedard in his first and second NHL years came from the assumption that he was supposed to be great, and anything less than instant greatness counted as failure. So that was pressure, absolutely, but it was just a very different kind of pressure. Graf's challenges weren't about failing to meet superstardom expectations. They were about whether he even had a place in the league. Bedard's adversity is performance expectation adversity. Graf's adversity is existential career adversity. Bedard's adversity challenged his ability to meet expectations, whereas Graf's adversity challenged his right to exist inside the system at all. One is demanding excellence and the other demands survival. It's a very different psychological landscape. Bedard's ceiling is assumed, Graf's mere presence was questioned. Bedard's struggles were, why isn't he already elite? Why isn't he living up to his potential? Whereas Graf's was, is he even NHL material? So Graf's path isn't harder, it's structurally very different. But I think that both are impressive for very different reasons. But while everyone is focusing on the very dramatic and impressive players like Celebrini and Bedard, I am very interested in quiet achievers like this. He's evidently very versatile, which is why the coaches seem to love him. In a project or in companies or in creative teams, you always have the flashy subject matter specialists who drop in, deliver expertise, and then they move on. And then you've got the people in the team who basically hold everything together and they do what needs to be done. For me, Graf is the hockey equivalent of that second category. He can play PP2 or PK1. He can support a scoring line or stabilize a vulnerable one. He understands systems. He can process the game as it changes. And he can deliver consistency even when the team collapses. In a recent game against the Stars, he was the only one who scored. So flashy players are wonderful and they're amazing to watch, but they can't be everywhere. And someone like Collin Graf is the person you trust to fill the gaps. He prevents a project or a team from falling apart and steps in without the need for applause. He's also clearly very good at handling pressure, the test that flashy players haven't faced yet. People like Celebrini and Bedard might one day be the best players in the league. But here's the uncomfortable truth. They've never had to experience real failure, not the way that Graf has, not the way that many late bloomers have. So we don't know how they're going to respond to a massive crisis of confidence, a long slump, being scratched, being demoted, being told they're not ready. Coaches already know that someone like Collin Graf has survived all of that and he's thrived. Resilience isn't hypothetical with him, it's proven, and they can see that he is someone that might bend, but he certainly doesn't break. So the reason why this story resonates with me, why this archetype is so interesting, is that every workplace, institution, and creative team has a Graf type. The adaptable one, the fixer, the person who does the unglamorous work, the one who can be moved anywhere without complaint, the stabilizer, the connector, the quietly competent one, who rarely gets the spotlight, rarely gets the headlines, rarely gets worshipped, but every successful project depends on them, and every championship team depends on them. In closing, the flashy players are always going to dominate the highlight reels, and I enjoy watching those highlight reels as much as everybody else does. But the quiet achiever, the versatile worker, and the adaptable mind, I find these people extremely inspirational, maybe because they're more relatable. I heard a commentator applaud Graf's work ethic. He said, "The one thing you can control every night is your work ethic. Sometimes the puck bounces over your stick. Sometimes you're hurt. Sometimes you're tired. But you can always work." He said, "I didn't have 1,000 great games in my career, but I worked my ass off every night." So I find that Colin Graf's hero's journey of the overlooked to be an interesting one amidst all of the many, many videos that I've seen about the flashier players.